Hello everyone, we're here today to go over a new book called Wildlife on Roads, and this handbook is for citizen science data collection and it's used for mitigation planning, and it was published by EcoCare in 2019. So who are the authors? The first author is Carrie Gunson, that would be me presenting today, and Carrie started her career in road ecology in 1999 in Banff National Park, where she monitored the effectiveness of the overpasses and underpasses, and has since brought her knowledge to Ontario, where she implements mitigation solutions primarily for Ontario's species at risk. Carrie met Dr. Fred Schuler in 2007, and Fred's been collecting road wildlife and ecological observations since the 1960s in Ontario, and he continues to do so in Bishop's Mills, where he resides, and collects information on vertebrates and invertebrates on local roads. The objectives of Wildlife on Roads was to provide guidelines to collect complete and accurate data, species and location. And then we want to gather all the observations, our experience, research papers, to provide a baseline of what we know of what animals are impacted by roads and what we don't know. So we could provide information to fill these knowledge gaps. And then we want to take all this information and provide data for mitigation planning. So Wildlife on Roads is 232 pages with a lot of color photos, and it has a literature review for vertebrates classified into the following taxa: amphibians, turtles, squamates, mammals, and birds. Each literature review will give you tips for road data collection for that specific taxa. There's species essays for species believed to be impacted by road mortality, case studies throughout the book, a glossary, literature reviews for each chapter, a species index labeling each species as species at risk or not, and 12 illustrations from award-winning artists to lead a Karstad. So throughout the book, you will find case studies and species essays. On the right is an organization of one of those essays, and it starts with diagnostic features of what you will see that can tell you what species it is when it's road killed or even when it's alive on road. And then we go on to describe the distribution across Ontario, the species habitat, life history, how and when it may interact with the road, and then bits and bobs about road mortality. Amphibians are first discussed in the handbook, and these are comprised of salamanders, newts, frogs, and toads. Some of these species are called wetland forest breeders, and they migrate en masse from forest habitat to wetlands to breed on warm spring nights. You must be there to see this migration to accurately collect the data, because their carcasses are quickly obliterated by passing vehicles and tires, and also by rainfall. And what you need to look for is their skin and their feet to understand what type of species you're seeing that's migrating. Then the book moves on to turtles. There are 8 species of turtles, and road mortality is a threat for 7 of these species. Turtles are especially vulnerable to road mortality because they're long-lived species, which means that the older they get, the more eggs they will lay on the roadsides. And when we have turtles nesting on the road shoulders, they are more subject to road mortality. And we cannot lose breeding individuals from the local populations because it takes so long for them to mature in the first place, up to 20 years. Another thing is that turtles will freeze in response to threat. So on roads, when a car whizzes by, it will hide in its shell, and it may be there for a while, subjecting it to higher risk of road mortality. The plastron is very diagnostic in turtles. Different species will have a different plastron, although some are similar between species. Some are quite different, such as the snapping turtle on the top right and the painted turtle on the top left. The plastron shape can tell you whether you have a male or female in some species, and the plastron pattern will also vary by individual. So now the book moves on to snakes and lizards. There's 16 species of snakes and 1 lizard, the 5-lined skink, and all are subject to road mortality, but less so for those snakes that live near water, such as the queen snake. So snakes move back and forth to and from their hibernaculum each warm season. Females are looking for nesting sites, and males are looking for mates. Snakes can sometimes be difficult to see, and then they're run over by accident, such as the gray or black rat snake seen on the asphalt in this picture. Some snakes are intentionally killed because snakes have a bad reputation and motorists will go out of their way to run them over. Diagnostic characteristics for snakes is similar to turtles. You look at the ventral patterns, the belly, the underside of the animal, such as the checkerboard pattern in the fox snake in the top right picture. For some male species, the hemipenis might be extruded in road-killed animals, and you can look at this to see if you have a male. And in our one Massasauga rattlesnake, you will sometimes see in the adults a rattle, such as seen in the red circle here. Mammals, 86 mammal species. Then they vastly range, these mammal species, across Ontario. We have large ungulates and carnivores, black bear, and goes down to medium-sized animals, red fox, and then we have less larger animals, and these include animals such as chipmunks. Raccoons, porcupines, muskrats, and skunks are killed most often, primarily because they're abundant on roadsides, but also because they move a lot. And don't forget bats. Bats are killed on roads too, but we just don't know a lot about this because the roadkill may occur at night and the carcass might not be there in the morning. And then mammals are notorious for crossing roads with their offspring, such as seen with this female moose with her offspring in New Brunswick. Diagnostic features for mammals: the fur, the pelage. When you are driving along a road, you'll often see the pelage, and that might be all that's left for a decomposed roadkill animal. And then hopefully you still have a tail that you can look at, because the tail can tell you a lot, such as this rat-like tail for the muskrat in the bottom left picture. The top right picture shows the longer tail of a long-tailed shrew and a shorter tail of a short-tailed shrew. The last group of animals discussed are birds. There are nearly 500 species of birds in Ontario, and I certainly did not know this when I started, and it was a challenge to organize all this information with the 20 orders of birds. And we are unsure of the true count of dead-on-road birds, and this is because the carcasses are sometimes flung off the road where we do not observe them. They're small, and they're quickly scavenged. But what we do know is that birds are subject to road mortality due to their feeding ecology and style of flight. So, for example, the geese in the bottom left picture are likely looking for grassy areas to feed, and the cliff swallow in the top right picture is interesting because it has been shown that evolution is selecting for individuals with shorter wingspans because these animals are able to better navigate passing vehicles and avoid being roadkilled. And then we have animals, scavengers, that come onto the roads to eat carcasses and are subject to road mortality, or owls that swoop down and hunt for live animals on roads. Diagnostic features for birds are feathers. And other things to look for are their feet and their beaks. So you can see in the top left sketch, you can see the talons of an owl. You can see the 4 toes of most woodpecker species to climb trees, and you can see the perching feet of a robin. And then in the bottom left picture, you can see the ruffed grouse foot in a road-killed animal, and you can, if you look closely, you can see bristles along its feet. Crossbill of a crossbill, and then the long tail feathers of a cuckoo. Next, the book moves on to data collection. This data sheet shows what we think are the most important fields of information to collect. And the top 2 are the location or waypoint and the species. Location or waypoint can be measured from your phone, taking a picture if your phone's on geolocate, handheld GPS unit, or even an app on your phone. This slide shows all the photo credits for the photos used in this slideshow, many of which are from dedicated citizen scientists. Thank you for that. And thank you to our sponsors of the book, which allowed us to publish the book in a timely fashion and have graphic design. And thank you to the many chapter reviewers, copy editors, the printing and graphing layout team from First Choice Books in British Columbia, Ontario, and of course the data contributions from the Ontario Reptile and Amphibian Atlas and Dr. Fred Schuler himself. Supplementary to the handbook is an iNaturalist project called Wildlife on Roads in Ontario, and we encourage you to sign up and submit your observations here. As of May 2020, we have just under 1,300 observations from 62 dedicated citizen scientists of 210 species. A great feature of iNaturalist is you can upload your pictures as seen with the star-nosed mole submitted by Cindy Present from the Long Point area. And this is unique because we don't know a lot about roadkill and these animals because they live most of their life underground or in wetlands hunting. So once you upload your picture, then if your phone was on geolocate, the iNaturalist program will automatically put the decimal degrees in the database so that we can map the data quickly and efficiently as seen here. One thing we learned from mapping the data and looking at the data for this book was that most of the data collections are in the south where most of us live. However, we encourage data collections in the boreal forest in the north where there are still a lot of animals, abundance of animals, and however fewer roads, but we need to understand the relationships of roads and wildlife in this area. Here we show an overview of the process. So we have all of our dedicated citizen scientists and others that are on roads collecting data, uploading into the data management application. Then we provide research summaries and mitigation solutions, which we'll go over in the next slides. This slide shows some of the types of wildlife underpass systems that we can integrate into our roads for wildlife safe passage. We can add shelving to these crossing structures to allow for dry passage as well as aquatic passage. We can also have open top tunnels that allow light into the underpass systems. And we can have overpass systems that allow maximum amount of light for safe wildlife passages on roads. And finally, we can have creek bridge pathways that have level higher banks along the river systems for animals to cross. And don't forget drainage culverts that already exist on roads that we can retrofit with exclusion fencing for wildlife use. This slide shows the various types of exclusion fencing we can use to guide animals to the underpass and overpass systems safely. And we have various types and installation methods to work with roadside management, such as this solid plastic fence by Animax that has perforations in there to allow drainage on our roadsides. Mitigation for birds, we just don't know a lot. We have low-flying leaf sprinters that are flying over roads and getting hit, and we need to provide some awareness, signage, traffic calming for these animals to perhaps change motorist behavior. We've also seen birds have rest stops over wildlife overpasses, and then owls are swooping down to collect animals. So we need to understand this flying behavior so that we can mitigate this. So next steps are we encourage you to go to our website, shown here, and purchase a handbook for your data collections in the 2020 season. And you can also book a workshop with us, and we can go over any of these techniques to collect accurate and complete data. And then we need to provide research summaries to use this data effectively. And then we need to encourage our transportation agencies to monitor mitigation measures, maintain these structures, and adaptively manage to improve effectiveness. So happy road surveying, everybody, and hope to see you soon.